15 years of believing that the little girl with my eyesore, so I thought was my entire world. I spent nearly 2 decades building a foundation on a foundation of sand. Fact. Only to find out that the architect of my life was the one person I was supposed to trust. My own flesh and blood. You think you know who you are. You think you know your family. Feed. But what happens when the truth is a poison that turns everything you ever loved into a graveyard of lies? This isn't just a story about a broken marriage. It is a story about how I took a sledgehammer to the lives of the two people who destroyed mine. My name is Ryan, and at 41, I thought I had the manual for a successful life. I worked in logistics across the country, while I built a quiet, steady world at home. My garage was my sanctuary. I spent years restoring a 1973 Honda CB750, piece by piece, nut by bolt, until it purred like a living thing. You put the work in, the engine would run. I thought the same logic applied to my wife, Katie. We met when we were 23, at a time when everything felt full of promise. She was the warmth in my life. Thinged. The person who remembered every birthday, every anniversary, every minor detail that made a house feel like a home. We had our daughter, Lily, and for 15 years, she was the heartbeat of our existence. I worked the shifts, paid the mortgage, and I was proud. God, I was so proud. Then there was my brother, Don. He was the charismatic one, the man who lived in the city, wearing suits that cost more than my first car. He drove a flashy car. He moved in circles that made me feel like a background character, and lived a life that was all about the next high. Katie loved those parties he hosted. She'd come home glowing, talking about how sophisticated his world was, fancy, while I was just happy to get back to my shop and my tools. I never saw it. I never saw the way they looked at each other in the shadows of those fancy loft apartments. I was too busy being the good provider, too busy being the man who held the family together. I was the one they ignored while they played their games. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the world stopped spinning. My mother called me, her voice thin, fragile, fixed, like glass about to shatter. She told me to come over, but specifically instructed me not to bring Katie. When I arrived, my father was sitting at the table, his face aged by a decade in just a few hours. Bing! My mother was weeping, her hands trembling as she held a heavy white envelope. "Sit down," she whispered. I felt the blood drain from my face before they even spoke a word. Don had been doing health screenings, testing for some minor issues. The labs, in their cold clinical precision, had flagged an anomaly. My father slid the envelope toward me. "It's not just an anomaly," he said, his voice void of emotion. "Paper inside was a death warrant for my sanity." Lily didn't share my markers. She shared the markers of a man who was supposed to be her uncle. The room turned black. I couldn't breathe. I looked at the documents, the ink mocking me, confirming that for 15 years, I had been the father of my brother's secret mistake. I went home that night with a heart carved out of ice. Katie was in the kitchen, humming, Yuzu, busy with the life she had built on a foundation of betrayal. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I simply laid the papers on the counter. When she saw them, her face went white, then gray, then she collapsed. "Mistake," she sobbed, grasping at my legs. "Dawn was just a moment. I chose you. I built a life with you, please. Don't ruin everything over one mistake." But one mistake. She didn't see a child. She saw a mistake. She saw a variable in an equation she thought she had solved. I looked down at her, and for the first time in 15 years, I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger who had been feeding me poison every single day. Thanked. The lawyer told me to be quiet. He told me to wait until the dust settled, but I didn't wait. I worked in logistics for years. I knew how to move things, and I knew how to dismantle systems. Beankin. I didn't destroy them with rage. I destroyed them with the truth. I systematically severed their financial ties. I moved the assets that were rightfully mine. I exposed the secrets Don kept from his business partners. Then let the truth drift into the ears of everyone they ever tried to impress. I turned the spotlight on their sophisticated world until it burned them alive. Don lost his job, his reputation, and the hollow shell of a life he bragged about. Katie lost the comfort, the stability, and the moral high ground she thought she possessed. But here is the final bitter irony. When the papers were finalized, when the house was sold, and the lawyers were done with their games, I sat on my bike that 1973 Honda and looked at the horizon. I realized that for all the years I spent building their happiness, I had completely forgotten to build my own. I had been the secondary character in a play I paid for. I left them in their hell. Don is broken, living in the wreckage of his own narcissism. Katie is struggling to keep her head above water, realizing that a mistake has a permanent cost. I kept Lily. Despite the blood, she was mine. I chose her, and she chose me. The biological truth didn't change the fact that I was the one who taught her how to ride a bike. I was the one who was there for every fever, every heartache, and every triumph. Starting over now. 1,000 miles away. I learned that you can spend your whole life polishing an engine, but if you put the wrong oil in, it's going to seize eventually. I learned that the most dangerous people in your life are often the ones sitting right across the table from you. I feel empty, but I feel free. The dust has settled. The engine is running clean.
First time in 41 years.
1. Driving. If you're out there, wondering if the red flags are real, believe them. Before you lose 15 years of your life, look at the truth.
No matter how much it hurts.
Because in the end, the truth is the only thing you can actually own. Did anyone tell me the truth before it was too late?
Mom said.
Ryan swore he didn't have a clue until the DNA test results finally surfaced. He claimed it was a fleeting moment from the past, something that occurred long before Katie and I ever committed to each other.
He insisted.
He believed she had walked away from him and chosen me. He truly assumed Lily was my own flesh and blood, just like everyone else in our circle did.
Here is the detail
that made my blood turn to ice in my veins. The timeline simply didn't add up. Katie and I started dating in January. Lily was born in September, which meant she was conceived back in December. Ride's story was that something happened between him and Katie in November, right before she and I were officially a couple, except for the fact that I had known Katie since October. We had been seeing each other casually, grabbing coffee, going to the movies. Nothing was official yet, but we were definitely heading in that direction. If something happened with Ryan in November, it wasn't some innocent mistake made before we were together.
Calculated, cold-blooded move while she was actively deciding between the two of us.
She picked me. Then she got pregnant with his child. She never said a single word. I sat in my truck in my parents' driveway for an hour after that conversation, just staring into the nothingness. 15 years of my life had been built on a foundation of pure lies. Every memory was now tainted,
Forever stained by deception.
every proud moment as Lily's father now felt like a cruel cosmic joke played at my expense. Then a cold clarity washed over me.
Phil, the kind of chilling realization that arrives right before you do something
You can never take back. I drove home, walked straight into my office, and pulled out every single financial document we possessed. Bank statements, insurance policies, mortgage papers, Katie's part-time income records. Everything was laid bare. I started taking pictures with my phone and uploading them to a private cloud storage account she didn't even know existed.
Fiction.
Katie was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I finally walked through the back door. Hey, honey, you're running late. Is everything okay? Yeah, I just got caught up with some things at work.
Think I'm going to work on the motorcycle for a bit before we eat.
I went up to my shop, locked the door, and started documenting every single piece of evidence. Text message between Katie and Ryan in our phone records that I could access through our shared family plan. Every family photo where Ryan was giving Katie looks I had been far too trusting to notice. Every time she had volunteered to drive Lily to replace a loan for some so-called uncle niece. Bonding time. Over the next week, I acted completely normal while I quietly gathered the ammunition I needed.
Easy.
Katie had absolutely no idea that anything was wrong. I kissed her goodbye every morning, asked about her day every evening, helped Lily with her math homework, and went through the motions of work and home.
It was the perfect routine.
But during every spare moment, I was building my case. I pulled our complete financial history, going back to the very month we got married. I found something truly interesting. 3 months before we walked down the aisle, Katie had received a $15,000 deposit into her personal checking account from Ryan. The memo line simply said, loan repayment. But I had never heard a single word about any loan.
First payment happened in March, 2 months before our wedding day.
At the time, Katie told me her grandmother had left her a bit of money. I never questioned it, because why would I?
My own brother and my fiance wouldn't be hiding something like that from me.
Right, wrong. I dug deeper into the history. I found regular payments from Ryan to Katie going back years. Usually, they were between 200 and 500. Sometimes they were much more. They always had vague, hollow descriptions like birthday money or helping out with the kids. When I added it all up, Ryan had transferred over 60
0 to Katie.
over those 15 years. That wasn't Uncle Generosities. That was hush money, plain and simple. I started cross-referencing the payment dates with our family calendar. Before Lily's first birthday party, Katie got 800 dot. Before our family reunion, when Lily was 7, Katie got 500. They had a perfect system in place. They had been managing this lie like a professional business operation.
Through our phone records next, as our
Family plan gave me full access to the call logs. Dot. Katie and Ryan texted each other an average of 27 times per day, every single day for years on end.
then
They called each other constantly too. Short stolen calls during the hours, when they knew I would be at work or busy with chores. I started documenting everything with precise timestamps. Katie called Ryan, 43 minutes, after Lily fell off her bike and broke her wrist. She texted him before even telling me about Lily making the honor roll at school. She contacted him first for every major parenting milestone, then told me later, as if I were just receiving the recap of her day. I was the guy living in the house, paying the bills, and showing up every single day.
e.g.
But Ryan was the one she turned to first whenever something important happened with his daughter. I made physical copies of everything. Bank records, text message logs, phone bills showing hundreds of calls between them. Lily's birth certificate, where I was listed as the father, medical records, and school reports. Every document proved that I had acted as her father for 15 years, while they both lied directly to my face. Then, I scheduled an appointment with the toughest divorce lawyer in the city. I paid the retainer in cold hard cash from my motorcycle fund. I made it clear that I wanted full custody, half the value of the house. And I wanted to ensure that Ryan couldn't slither out of child support once his paternity was legally established. The lawyer, a sharp, intimidating woman named Patricia, laid out the reality of the situation for me.
In this state,
You have a solid claim for fraud and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She told me, we can also pursue Ryan for child support, since he is clearly the biological father.
fact that you have been raising Lily under false pretenses
Actually works significantly in your favor regarding custody. What about Katie? I asked. Patricia smiled, but it wasn't a friendly gesture.
she is in a very difficult position.
She is the one who perpetrated the fraud. She knew Ryan was the father and allowed you to act as the father for 15 years. That is going to cost her dearly in court
Financially,
and in terms of custody. It was music to my ears. I waited until every piece of the puzzle was perfectly in place. Lawyer retained, evidence compiled, and the divorce papers ready to file. I picked a quiet Saturday morning when I knew we would be entirely alone. Lily was at a friend's house for a sleepover, and the house was hauntingly still. Katie was sitting at the kitchen table, casually going through grocery coupons, planning the next week's food run just as she had done for 15 years. Icetown directly across from her, and slowly slid a thick, heavy folder across the wooden table. What is this? She asked, her voice light as she reached out to open it. The silence that followed would be the last moment of peace she would ever know in this house. It was a Sunday morning, and the kitchen was filled with the familiar
domestic rhythm I had known for 15 years.
Patricia sat at the oak table, scanning coupons and mapping out the week's grocery list, just as she always had. I pulled out the chair across from her,
Vent.
my movements heavy and deliberate, and slid a thick manila folder toward her. "What is this?" she asked, her voice light, though her hand trembled slightly as she pulled the document out.
Feud.
I watched her face as she scanned the genetic test results, proving that Ryan was Lily's biological father. The bank statements detailing the secret payments Shed received from him,
Phones.
and the phone logs documenting their daily clandestine communication. The color drained from her skin so instantly that she looked like a ghost trapped in daylight.
How did you find this?
She whispered, the papers slipping from her shaking fingers. "It doesn't matter how I found out," I replied, my voice steady despite the hurricane in my chest. "What matters is that for 16 years,
Bean.
you looked me in the eye and built a life on a foundation of sand." She began to weep. Not the gentle, quiet tears of a mistake, but the guttural, soul-crushing sobs of someone whose world has just collapsed.
Wrong.
It was just one night. A moment of weakness. She gasped, hyperventilating as the mascara streaked down her face. I was confused. "And I chose to build a future with you, because you were kind and stable."
That.
And Ryan he was nothing but chaos. I watched her slide off the chair, crumbling onto the kitchen floor, clutching her knees as she rocked back and forth. "I didn't know at first," she continued, her voice jagged.
Few.
By the time I realized, the timing didn't add up. We were already engaged, and I was so terrified of losing you that I just couldn't face the truth. She looked up at me, eyes raw and desperate.
Finged.
Ryan said. He would stay quiet. If I just let things be said, we didn't need to destroy 3 lives over a past error. "So you both decided that I was the perfect pawn?" I asked, the bitterness coating my tongue.
Make a mistake, Patricia. You made a career out of deception. Set.
You allowed me to raise a child, to pour my entire heart into her, while you were taking his money and consulting him on her life behind my back.
Phones like that.
She pleaded, reaching out for my hand. I convinced myself. She was yours. Everyone said she had your eyes, and I wanted so badly for that to be the truth. That truth was a lie you curated every single morning, I said, rising to my feet. I'm filing for divorce, and I am pursuing full custody of Lily. Biology doesn't make a father, but your betrayal makes you an unfit parent.
Thing.
I'm coming after Ryan for every penny of child support he avoided for 15 years. And I'm ensuring everyone or friends, our family knows exactly who you are. She scrambled up, grabbing my leg in a pathetic, desperate grip.
Please.
Don't take her from me, she shrieked. We can fix this. We can work through this. Just don't tear our family apart. I looked down at her, and for the first time I felt nothing. The silence in my heart was absolute.
Family.
You destroyed this family when you decided that lying was the easier path, I said, pulling my leg free and walking toward the door. I drove to my parents' house, the engine of the Honda humming a rhythm of finality.
Thing.
When I walked through the door, my mother saw the look in my eyes and didn't even have to ask. You told her? She said, her voice soft with grief. I told her everything, I replied.
Feeling the exhaustion of 15 years finally hitting me.
My father came in from the garage, wiping grease from his hands with a rag, his face darkening as I explained the betrayal. You're not going to a hotel, Dad said.
Rumbled it.
His tone final. Your old room is waiting, and you aren't spending another cent on that woman. I spent the evening in a haze, watching the phone light up repeatedly with calls from Katie's name I had called her for years.
Felt like an insult now.
I ignored 50 calls before sending one final message. Contact my lawyer, Patricia Steele at Steele Associates. Then I blocked her. Ryan called next, and I answered,
Best.
needing to hear the sound of the man who had played me for a fool. Listen, we need to handle this like adults, he started, his voice dripping with his usual arrogance.
Adults don't
Sleep with their brother's partner and hide the child for a decade and a half. I snapped back. I didn't know. You two were official, he stammered. I didn't know she was my daughter until the tests. But you knew,
Finn.
I whispered, the rage finally bubbling to the surface. You knew there was a chance, and you sat back, paid your hush money, and played the role of the fun uncle while I was the one doing the real work. The line went silent,
Beauty.
the weight of the truth hanging between us like a guillotine. The justice I sought wouldn't be found in a moment of anger, but in the slow, calculated dismantling of the life they had built on my back. I was finally free.
For the first time in 15 years.
The person looking back at me in the mirror was no longer a stranger. The phone was deathly quiet, but I could hear his shallow, jagged breathing on the other end of the line.
Everything felt frozen in time.
Yet my heart was racing like a war drum against my ribs. So, you knew there was a chance, didn't you, Ryan? I asked, my voice dangerously calm.
Fingin.
You knew the timing was suspicious from the very beginning. But instead of being a man and telling me the truth, you paid Katie to keep her mouth shut. You spent 15 years playing the fun,
Please.
generous uncle, while I was the one actually raising your daughter. There was no answer, just the suffocating weight of his silence. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head.
Pressed to manufacture some pathetic excuse.
The first payment was $15,000, Ryan, exactly 3 months before our wedding day,
Fiancé $15,000.
just to bury the secret that she might be carrying your child. That wasn't some impulsive mistake. That was a calculated,
Inan.
cold-blooded decision to let your own brother raise your daughter without ever knowing the truth. Finally, he spoke, his voice trembling with a fake hollow regret. I thought she'd tell you eventually, I swear.
Truly thought. Once you were married and settled, she'd find
The courage to come clean. I never meant for this deception to last this long. I never intended to hurt you like this. I let out a bitter,
jagged laugh that didn't reach my eyes,
but it did last that long.
didn't it?
15 years of lies. And the whole time, you kept paying her off. You kept texting her 27 times a day, hidden behind a screen.
Being like a puppet master.
You even weighed in on every major parenting decision, from which school Lily should attend, to whether or not we should have more kids.
Faint.
You were intimately involved in every single aspect of her life, while I was living in a total blissful state of ignorance. I had a right to know about my own daughter's life. He suddenly snapped, his voice filled with an ugly,
Misplaced entitlement.
I felt a surge of rage, so hot it made my vision blur.
You had a right.
You had the right to be honest from the very first day, Ryan.
U2S.
You had the right to look your brother in the eye and admit you got his girlfriend pregnant. You had the right to establish paternity legally and pay child support the way a man is supposed to,
You didn't want any of those rights.
because rights come with responsibilities and consequences. You just wanted to be the hero who swooped in with expensive gifts while I handled the messy daily work of being a father.
Fair.
He whimpered. You want to talk about fairness. Do you want to know what's truly unfair? Finding out at 41 that every single memory you have as a father is a lie.
Phage.
Tainted by the knowledge that the two people you loved most were betraying you every single day. Silence returned, heavier and more suffocating than before. Here is exactly what is going to happen next, I said.
Voice cold as ice.
You are going to establish legal paternity immediately. You are going to start paying backdated child support for the last 15 years, plus full ongoing support.
Thanks.
You are going to sign sworn affidavits for my divorce lawyer, confirming the affair and every single payment you made. And then you are going to stay away from me and my family for the rest of your life. I am still her father,
Fit.
he whispered, a desperate plea for relevance. No, you are just a sperm donor who paid a premium to keep his mistake quiet. I am her father. I am the man who walked the floors at night when she had colic.
Ejim.
I was the one who changed her diapers, taught her to ride a bike without help trust of imes.
Yeah.
Dot and sat through every single parent-teacher conference,
Just the stranger.
who showed up at birthdays with expensive toys to soothe your own rotting conscience. I want to be in her life, he insisted, his voice rising in panic. If you wanted to be in her life,
UTEP.
you should have been honest. 15 years ago, I am filing for full legal custody, and I am going to win. You will be lucky if you even get supervised visitation in a room with a social worker.
Big
His
days.
tone shifted from pathetic to aggressive, the mask finally slipping. You can't keep me from my daughter. I have rights. You surrendered those rights the moment you paid Katie to keep your secret. Every single payment,
In every secret text.
every coordinated lethat is clear evidence of fraud. Do you really think a judge is going to reward that kind of behavior with custody? You're dreaming, Ryan. I'll fight you on this.
Phil.
Get my own lawyer and prove I deserve to be in Lily's life.
Good luck with that while.
You're busy finding a lawyer. You might want to explain to the judge why you owe nearly $500,000 in back child support.
Think that will go over very well.
I could hear him breathing hard, the weight of his new reality finally crashing down on him. You know what truly kills me? I asked, my voice steady.
It's not even the fact.
That you slept with Katie. People are flawed, and people make mistakes. What kills me is that you looked me in the eye for 15 years, knowing you were hiding a daughter from me.
Uverin.
Every Christmas morning, every Thanksgiving dinner, every family barbecue, you watched me pour my heart and soul into raising your kid, and you said absolutely nothing. I was just trying to protect the family, he stammered.
You were protecting yourself.
There is a massive difference. I hung up the phone and immediately blocked his number. About an hour later, my phone rang from an unrecognized area code. I answered, assuming it was a client from
Work.
This is Stephen Hendricks, Ryan's attorney. A smooth, professional voice said, Mr. Ryan has retained me to discuss the situation and would like to meet to work out a reasonable agreement.
Use up. Already.
The man didn't waste a second trying to save his own skin. Tell your client to have his lawyer contact my lawyer, Patricia Steele at Steele Associates.
Brent.
I am not discussing a single word of this with you or anyone representing him. We could avoid expensive litigation that won't benefit anyone, he pushed back.
What would benefit me
Is Ryan finally taking responsibility for his actions? That is going to happen through the court system, not over coffee. Have a nice day. I hung up and called Patricia immediately.
Feud.
I told her Ryan had already hired a shark to try and negotiate his way out of the mess. She just laughed, and it wasn't a friendly social laugh. It was the cold, sharp sound of a professional who knew she had the upper hand.
Them try.
She said, every attempt to negotiate will be documented and used against him. When this goes to trial, the judge is going to see that we have been consistent since day one. Full accountability.
Full consequences. And absolutely no backroom deals.
They are going to try to paint you as a vindictive, angry ex, she warned. They can try, but being vindictive would be keeping him from his daughter out of pure spite.
Doing.
That you are just ensuring he pays the support he owes and establishing boundaries after a massive systemic breach of trust. That isn't vindictive. That's just reasonable. Patricia filed the divorce papers that Monday morning. Katie was served right in the middle of the dental office where she worked. According to the receptionist who called me later that afternoon, Katie had a complete mental breakdown in the lobby in front of all the patients. She had to be sent home early, a weeping mess. Good. The petition included detailed claims for fraud,
Function.
intentional infliction of emotional distress, and a breach of fiduciary duty. We also filed for full sole custody of Lily, with Katie only permitted supervised visitation. The supporting documents we submitted included everything the bank transfers from Ryan, the decrypted phone records, and the irrefutable genetic test results. Ryan was served with a paternity action the very same day. The dominoes were finally falling, and I wouldn't stop until the truth had completely leveled his world. The thick envelope sat on my desk, containing the evidence that would rewrite my entire history. Every document was accounted for. The bank statements proving the steady flow of payments from Ryan. The decrypted phone logs, and the definitive genetic report. Everything was ready. By noon that same day, Ryan was served with a formal paternity lawsuit. It was a cold, calculated move, demanding a legal recognition of paternity, the payment of 15 years of back child support, and a structured plan for ongoing financial contributions. His career in pharmaceutical sales brought in roughly $180,000 annually, bonuses included. According to the rigid state guidelines,
Fusion.
he owed $2,700 every month for 180 months. Patricia, my lawyer, offered a sharp, satisfied smile as she slid the final calculation across the mahogany table.
Second.
That represents $486,000 in retroactive support alone, plus accrued interest. And we haven't even factored in his share of the medical bills, tuition, and all those extracurricular activities from over the years. I let out a low whistle, feeling a mixture of grim satisfaction and exhaustion. That is going to shatter him. That is the entire objective.
Fusion.
We also filed a comprehensive fraud claim against him for his calculated financial deception. By intentionally paying Katie to conceal the truth about Lily's paternity, he had opened himself up to massive civil liability.
Eat.
Patricia was already pushing for an additional $100,000 in damages to compensate for the intentional infliction of emotional distress. Within a week,
Feel.
both Katie and Ryan had scrambled to hire high-priced legal representation. Their lawyers reached out to Patricia, trying to force a mediation, trying to find a loophole. She shut them down without a second of hesitation.
Villain.
My client has zero interest in mediation, she told them, her voice icy. We will see you in court. Then came the part I had been dreading more than the lawsuit itself.
Feign.
How could I possibly explain to a 14-year-old girl that the foundation of her life had been built on a lie? I picked Lily up from her friend's house on a quiet Sunday afternoon and drove us to our favorite local diner.
Picked.
It was the spot with the best milkshakes and greasy burgers, a place where Wed spent countless hours. I told her to order whatever her heart desired. We sat in our usual booth near the window, for the sun casting long shadows across the table. Dad, you're acting really strange, she said, her brow furrowing. What is going on? I took a shaky breath, trying to steady what's my racing heart. Sweetheart,
Talk to you about something incredibly important.
it is going to be confusing, and honestly, it is probably going to hurt. But I need you to understand that nothing in this world changes how much I love you. Her expression shifted instantly, becoming guarded and serious. Are you sick? No, nothing like that. I promised. But your mom and I are getting a divorce. She leaned back, silently processing the information.
He didn't look completely shocked.
Children always possess an innate sense of when the air in a home has turned toxic. Is this because of Uncle Ryan? Her question hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean?
Thing.
I am not stupid, Dad, she said, her voice dropping. I have seen the way Mom looks at him, and she is always glued to her phone, texting him. I figured something was happening. She was so incredibly smart, and in that moment,
Finctition.
it pained me. It is much more complicated than that, I started, my voice trembling. We discovered recently that Uncle Ryan is actually your biological father. You are still my daughter in every single way that matters. But technically, biologically, he is the one who fathered you. Lily stared at me, the silence stretching on for what felt like an eternity. Then, she uttered the words that made me want to weep and rage at the same time. So,
Thought really my dad.
I am absolutely your real dad, I said, leaning forward to grab her hand. I have been your father since the very second you arrived in this world. I am the one who was there for every fever,
Every nightmare.
every homework assignment, and every lesson on how to navigate this world. Biology is just a tiny part of the equation, but it does change everything, she whispered, tears welling up.
Really my father.
Lily, listen to me, I pleaded, my heart breaking. Being a father has nothing to do with DNA. It is about showing up when it counts.
It is about being the one.
Who is there when you are scared, when you are hurt, or when you need someone to help you fix a broken bicycle, or give you advice about the world. I have been that person.
Fune.
Ryan just provided the genetic material. She started to cry, not the dramatic weeping of a teenager, but a quiet, rhythmic sobbing that felt like it was tearing me apart from the inside. Why would they lie about this?
Fence.
Why would Mom do this to me? Because people make selfish, destructive choices sometimes, I said, my voice thick. Your mom made a mistake before we were married. And instead of being honest,
He decided to bury it under layers of deception.
that is on her and Ryan, never on you. Does this mean I have to go live with Ryan now? The fear in her voice was palpable. No, you are staying with me, I said firmly.
Fighting for full custody. Because you are my daughter.
And I am not letting you go. Your mom will still see you, but I will be your primary parent. Good, she said, wiping her eyes.
Thanked.
I don't want to live with her if she has been lying to me my entire life. We sat in that diner for another hour, stripping away the layers of the lie. She asked hard questions, and I answered with brutal honesty.
Beam.
By the time we left, she seemed to understand that while our world had been upended, the bond between us remained the only truth. Dad! Yeah, kiddo. Thanks for still wanting me, she said.
Sentence shattered
The last bit of my composure. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand with everything I had. I am always going to want you, I said. You are stuck with me for life. She offered a small
smile.
Can we still work on the motorcycle together? I absolutely think we should, I said, a plan forming. Actually, I was thinking we could start on a new project just for you. We can find you a bike to restore.
Frame off frick frame and build it back up to be perfect.
Her eyes lit up with a spark of excitement. Really? Something small like an old Yamaha or Suzuki. I promised, when you are old enough to ride.
Something you built with your own 2 hands. Can it be purple?
It can be whatever color you want, kid. The divorce proceedings were a battlefield. Katie's lawyer tried every manipulative tactic in the book.
You attempt to paint me as a vindictive, controlling man.
They claimed I was trying to alienate Lily from her mother and argued that I had known about the paternity issues for years,
Reason.
only weaponizing them now for a better settlement. Patricia dismantled those lies, piece by piece. She displayed the exact timeline of when I discovered the truth.
Mate.
Brought in my parents to testify that they had only been told 3 months ago. Ann presented the irrefutable genetic results along with Ryan's own admissions. Katie tried to pivot,
Friend.
claiming she had been coerced by Ryan into staying silent. She argued that he had threatened to expose her if she didn't take his money and keep the secret.
Fixing.
Her lawyer positioned her as just another victim of Ryan's manipulation. Patricia destroyed that narrative by projecting Katie's own text messages onto the courtroom screen. There were years of friendly, intimate,
Fuji.
and often flirty conversations with Ryan. They had been coordinating their stories before family events and laughing about their secret while I was at work. The screenshots showed her, thanking him for being so generous.
He's tapped.
Over and over again. These do not look like the messages of a woman being coerced, Patricia stated, her voice booming in the courtroom. These are the messages of 2 people maintaining a calculated, deceptive relationship at the expense of my client and his child. The judge looked at the evidence, then at Katie, and the disgust on his face was clear. Ryan's case, however, was about to get much worse. The courtroom was deathly silent, the air heavy with the weight of years of calculated deception. Patricia, my attorney, stood tall, her voice slicing through the tension as she addressed the judge. These messages are not those of an uncle, Your Honor, she stated firmly. These are the digital footprints of a man and a woman maintaining a long-term, deceptive affair at the expense of my client,
Fed.
and the child caught in the middle. The judge looked down at the documents, his expression hardening as he processed the evidence of their betrayal. Ryan, sitting across the aisle, looked like a man who had seen his own ghost.
Fiend.
He tried to spin a pathetic narrative, claiming he had only recently discovered the truth and was simply eager to build a relationship with Lily. Patricia didn't even blink. She just started laying out the cold, hard facts. She presented the bank transfers, the hidden call logs, and the meticulous coordination between Ryan and Katie. It was never about protection, Patricia argued, her voice cold and professional.
Trying to be a loving uncle.
He was hiding his paternity to dodge child support while keep himself close enough to play. Pretend. That is premeditated fraud. Your Honor, she concluded. The judge didn't waste time,
Things.
ordering immediate genetic testing to seal the truth once and for all. Then came the hammer, hitting Ryan with a total back support judgment of $486,000 plus interest due the moment the gavel fell. Face turned the color of parchment, his hands trembling as he stared at the mounting debt. His lawyer begged for a payment plan, but Patricia shut it down before he could even finish his sentence.
Fish.
My client has carried the financial burden of his brother's child for 15 years, she declared, while Mr. Ryan lived a life of luxury in expensive apartments and drove high-end cars.
Feud.
He has plenty of assets to liquidate to satisfy this debt. The judge agreed, giving Ryan exactly 60 days to pay up or face wage garnishment and the total seizure of his accounts. Katie's life collapsed shortly after.
She was fired from her dental office.
Turns out, having public emotional breakdowns between patients doesn't exactly build client loyalty. She moved out of our home and into a cramped studio above a dry cleaner, where you can hear every move the neighbors make. She's now working night shifts at a grocery store, stocking shelves for minimum wage with zero benefits. Last month, they repoed her car,
Feed.
so now she takes the bus to her supervised visits with Lily. Lily told me last week that her mother showed up 40 minutes late because she missed a transfer, leaving my daughter waiting in the cold.
Fall was even more spectacular. That
That $486,000 bill effectively wiped him off the map. The BMW went first, followed by his entire investment portfolio, and he even had to leverage his 401k.
Season.
He was still short by 80 grand, so the court started carving into his paycheck immediately. His pharmaceutical company let him go 3 months after the scandal broke, citing that he didn't represent their company values.
He tried to find a new job,
But he was so fried from the stress that his sales numbers were non-existent. Now, he works for a rival firm for half his old salary, living in a tiny unit, driving a dented 2007 Corolla.
people from
People from our past tell me he looks 10 years older, a ghost of the man he used to be. The $2,700 monthly support payment hits my account like clockwork,
future.
and I have exactly 4 more years of watching his ego deflate with every transfer. The best part, I opened a dedicated college fund for Lily, putting every single cent of that money toward her future.
Fee.
She's going to graduate with a degree in mechanical engineering, and she will succeed because of her own brilliance, not because of the man who tried to lie her into existence. My parents washed their hands of him completely. They updated their wills last month, cutting him out of the family inheritance. Entirely, he won't see a dime. Mom ran into him at the grocery store a few weeks back, and when he tried to stop her to apologize,
He just kept walking like he was thin air.
Dad told me later that Mom cried for an hour after she got home, but she didn't waver for a second. He made his choice. When he lied to you for 15 years, Dad said.
Things. We raised him better than that.
Thanksgiving was a Holocene he wasn't invited, but he showed up anyway, standing on the porch ringing the bell while we laughed inside.
E2.
Dad eventually went out there and told him to leave or the police would be dragging him off the property. Christmas was exactly the same. He sent gifts for Lily.
Burn them to the sender. Unopened.
Lily didn't want anything from a stranger anyway. Even our extended drew lines in the sand. My uncle tore into him at a cousin's wedding, calling him a disgrace to our name.
Feet.
And my aunt blocked his number when he tried to call her crying about how unfair it all was. Katie's family has disowned her too,
Thanks. Her parents are humiliated dead.
and only supervise those visits with Lily because they feel they have to. But the look in their eyes was one of pure, unadulterated shame. Her father, Steve, won't even look her in the face.
Fuse.
Grace stopped inviting her to Sunday dinners, and when Katie tried to crash one of Lily's softball games, I had the coach escort her off the field for violating the agreement. She sat in her car in the parking lot, weeping.
Few.
While Lily hit a double, my daughter didn't even acknowledge that her mother was there. 3 months ago, Ryan tried one last desperate play
Fees. He showed up at my office with a pathetic sob story.
about how he'd changed and how he finally wanted to be a real part of Lily's life. I was at the loading dock when security called me.
Fuck find.
Him leaning against that dented Corolla, looking like he'd aged 20 years. I know you hate me. He started, his voice cracking. I deserve that, but Lily deserves to know her biological father.
You not asking for custody.
Just let me see her sometime stake her to dinner, or something. I stared at him, cold and detached. You are violating the restraining order, just by standing here, I told him.
From there.
Isn't a restraining order, he pleaded. There will be, if you ever show your face here again, I snapped. Stay away from my workplace. Stay away from Lily's school. Stay away from me.
Fingsid.
You get your court-mandated hour of supervised time once a month, and that is where the interaction ends. Lily doesn't even talk to you. During those visits, she just sits there on her phone until the clock runs out. That's on you.
15 years to be her father, but you chose to be a shadow.
Now you can live with the silence you created. This is a complete YouTube storytelling script, structured for emotional impact and high retention.
Find.
They say blood is thicker than water, but for 15 years, I lived a lie built on a foundation of ink and deceit. I spent nearly 2 decades playing the role of a devoted father to a girl I thought was my own flesh and blood.
Think.
But then, the truth came out, and it didn't just shake my world, it demolished it. Now, those who betrayed me are living in the wreckage, and am finally building something real from the ashes.
Lily has supervised visitation once a month.
And that is the absolute limit. During those 60 minutes, she doesn't even acknowledge his existence. She just sits there, eyes glued to her phone,
Thing tonight.
waiting for the clock to run out. When I asked her why she even bothers going, she looked at me with a maturity that broke my heart. Because the court order forces me to show up, she said, her voice cold as ice.
He in this world can force me to pretend that man is my father.
I remember the day Ryanthi man, who claimed to be her biological dad, tried to pull the trying to make things right card on my driveway.
He didn't let him finish.
I told him, you had 15 years to be a father, but you chose to pay Katie to keep me in the dark. Stay in your lane, keep sending the child support checks,
Fing.
and get off my property before I have you arrested for trespassing. He left that day, and honestly, I hope I never see him again. Katie, on the other hand, couldn't handle the pressure of reality. Last month,
Friendy.
she had a full-blown meltdown at the local grocery store. Someone recognized her from the scandal, and they made a comment just loud enough for the whole aisle to hear about women who commit paternity fraud. Katie snapped.
Reddit.
She started screaming at the top of her lungs, grabbing a jar of pasta sauce and hurling it against the tile floor. The shards and red sauce went everywhere. Security had to drag her out.
Video went that viral on social media by the next morning.
She lost that job too. Now, she's working at a dingy laundromat, doing wash hand fold services for pennies. She actually tried to take me back to court,
Find.
claiming I was alienating Lily from her. But my lawyer, Patricia Steele, absolutely dismantled her in front of the judge. She presented cold, hard evidence of Katie's instability.
Thayen.
The judge didn't just deny her request. He increased my custody to 90%. He looked right at Katie and said, "Your behavior is a danger to this child's well-being." She started sobbing, but the courtroom was silent.
Throw pasta sauce at strangers and expect to win custody of a teenager.
The divorce was finalized 2 months ago. I kept the house, full custody, and my entire retirement account. Meanwhile,
Thanked.
Ryan is legally obligated to pay support until Lily turns 18, and Katie is under a strict supervised visitation schedule once she proves she can hold a job for 6 months.
You now.
But let me tell you about what's actually important. Lily and I finished our project, that purple Yamaha, SAR 250. It took us 6 months of working every weekend, from the frame up to the engine block.
Foot.
She can't ride it for another 2 years, but she walks past the garage every day just to look at it. And the smile on her face is worth more than any DNA test in the world.
Fastened.
Shez acing her honors classes and already talking about engineering school. My parents even bought her a set of professional engineering textbooks, and Shez already reading through the physics and material stress chapters.
Ford.
This kid isn't just bright, she's destined for greatness. Last week, Lily came to me with a business plan. She had spreadsheets, market research, and a 5-year projection for a custom motorcycle restoration shop. She said,
Dad.
"You've got 25 years until retirement. If we build this now, by the time I graduate with my engineering degree, we'll be the best in the state." I looked at her, and it hit me. Ryan's DNA didn't make her smart.
Katie's parenting didn't make her capable.
I did. I raised her to think critically, to plan, and to move forward.
Fing.
Shez changing her last name to mine legally no more connection to the woman who sold her birthright for a paycheck. As for the villains of this story,
Font.
Ryan just got fired from his second job because his background check flagged the paternity fraud scandal. Nobody wants to hire a man who spent 15 years living a lie. He's working at an electronics store now,
Fing.
barely making minimum wage, drowning in the garnishments I'm taking from his check. Katie spent 2 nights in jail after skipping her mandatory visits, and now she's tethered to community service and court-ordered counseling.
Finged.
Justice isn't a quick fix, and it certainly isn't always fair. But for the first time in 15 years, the person living under my roof is finally, truly mine, and we're just getting started.
They say that silence is the loudest scream.
But for me, it was the sound of absolute victory. After years of being the pawn in someone else's twisted game, I finally took back the board.
Feed.
The wreckage left behind wasn't mine to clean up anymore. It belonged to those who thought they could build a life on the foundation of my own destruction. Katie sat behind cold steel bars for 2 full nights
Reality check.
that shattered her carefully crafted image of control. Her custody violations weren't just mistakes, they were calculated attempts to erase me from my daughter's life. When her parents finally arrived to bail her out, the look on her face wasn't one of remorse, but of pure, unadulterated shock. The judge didn't just scold her, he stripped away her leverage.
Finjin.
Mandatory counseling and hundreds of hours of community service were now her new daily routine. Until every single requirement was checked off, Lily was completely off limits to her. Justice isn't always loud sometimes.
Ikis.
It's just a courtroom order that changes everything in a heartbeat.
Dot.
My parents decided it was time to close the chapter on this town. They listed their home, the place where I grew up,
Fudzi.
the place where all the memories of Ryan's betrayal were etched into the very walls. "It's too heavy here," Mom whispered to me while we packed the last of the boxes. They were moving to a quiet retirement community 2 hours away.
Speaking peace, far from the ghosts of our past.
Our final dinner together was a quiet, intimate affair, just the 4 of us. Mom, Dad, Lila, and me. Dad made his famous pot roast, and for the first time in years,
Feel thick with tension.
we laughed about my childhood, we talked about the future, and not onsonant even for a second did we utter the names Ryan or Katie. It felt like the toxic fog had finally lifted, leaving behind a clear, bright morning. Lily is a force of nature, growing faster and smarter than I ever could have imagined. High school is on the horizon, and she's already secured a spot on the advanced robotics team.
Fing.
The coach took one look at her project portfolio and broke protocol, inviting her in a year early. She's the only 8th grader to ever receive such an honor, and honestly, I couldn't be prouder.
Fugent.
Shez not just brilliant, Shez resilient. She saw the lies for what they were, and instead of letting them break her, she used them as fuel. Out in the shop, the restoration of the vintage Ducati is moving along beautifully,
Frames powder-coated.
and the engine completely torn down, ready for a fresh, powerful start. Lily has developed a fascination with Italian motorcycle engineering,
Funden.
diving deep into the complexities of a machine that requires soul to function. It's completely different from the Japanese bikes Shez worked on before, but Shez absorbing every detail.
Fury Bolt We Titan. Feels like
We're building something solid, something that can't be dismantled by anyone. Elsa's lies. People often ask me if I feel guilty about how things ended for Ryan and Katie. The truth.
feel nothing but the quiet satisfaction of a debt being settled.
They spent years weaving a web of deceit, fully intending to keep me entangled forever. They thought I was too weak to cut the cords, too soft to fight back.
Forgot one thing.
I wasn't fighting for revenge. I was fighting for my daughter. I didn't destroy their lives. I simply stopped holding up the roof they had built on my back. When the support was removed, the entire structure they relied on came crashing down under the weight of its own dishonesty. Dot, I'm exactly where I need to be right now. My house is quiet. My daughter is happy.
Fuzette.
And my shop is filled with the scent of oil and the promise of new projects. There is no more drama, no more manufactured crises, and absolutely no more people pretending to care while they reach into my pockets.
Fear is simple.
The lesson here is simple. Protect your peace with everything you have. Some people will never change, no matter how many chances you give them. So, walk away, build your own world,
Finn.
and never look back at the rubble they're left standing in. Guys, we are incredibly close to hitting 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you haven't hit that button yet, please consider subscribing today.
Frankston.
It means the world to me, and it helps us continue to share these stories of survival and reclamation not. Thanks for being part of this journey and helping turn this dream into a reality. Stay strong, stay smart, and remember,
Facey.
you are the only one in control of your story.